This is a Think McFly Think podcast. Oh, my freaking ears!
You're gonna see some serious shit.
No place to hide. No place to run. No place to run. The mutant age has now begun. X-Men, X-Men, this is a day, this is a day. X-Men, X-Men, coming your way. Magneto's hordes are on the way to pillage, burn, and plunder. But there's one team that will not yield, the team that strikes like thunder. X-Men, X-Men, this is the day, this is the day.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to your Movie Moan X-Men special. And if you're watching it in its preferred format, welcome to your special video version of the Movie Moan X-Men special. I was originally planning that we'd just do a normal podcast, but it's so weird that one of the only Movie Moan videos that's still on YouTube untouched is our X-Men First Class video review from 3 years ago, and it's gotten over 100,000 views now. Now, that's not really impressive over the space of 3 years to you out there, obviously, but it's impressive to me, especially since I've no idea why the view count's so high. It wasn't anything special. It was just me, Jamie, and Lou, and it was passionate, but I bet there were a ton of X-Men First Class reviews that were just as gushing about that film, and looking back at it now, of course, I find it a bit embarrassing because my video editing was very messy and clunky, and I was just starting out. I've gotten much better now, but given those huge ratings, we've got to give you a video version of its true sequel, and I really do recommend, if you're just listening to us in MP3 format right now, please stop. Watch the YouTube version, assuming it's not been pulled down, because I will maintain, and I'm tipping my hat a little bit here, that this is one of the most gorgeous looking comic book movies that's ever been made, and I've been capturing all the frames from every trailer and TV spot over the last day or so, and I've been drinking it all in again. And I just think you should take the chance to drink in that visual feast and listen to us, but also watch it as well. Watch the video version. Anyway, enough stalling. Let's introduce the Brotherhood of Mutant podcasters that we've got for this special show. First up, my name is Phil G, English gentleman at your service, and if I were an X-Man, I'd obviously be Professor X, because I'm English, because I'm in charge, because beards don't suit me, and because I am going bald. Joining me is my co-host, my lifelong friend, determined to stick together despite the clashing ideologies that sometimes make us clash. My Magneto, Mr. Jamie Williams. Hello, sir.
Hello, sir. And like Magneto, I'm going gray.
Are you really?
I think so. Yeah, I noticed in the car. I was like, hey, I'm getting gray. Like,
oh, dude, I'm here.
I know. I liked it actually.
Well, we'll have to do that off air, but I'm here for you.
It doesn't bother me. I think it's actually really cool. So.
That's exactly what Rogue said when she got the little stripe. I should have called you Rogue, but hey-ho. But that would mean you're only in this for 2 seconds. That's not true. Also joining us is a writer for superhero hype. He's warm, he's cuddly, and he's fuzzy. So if they completely reboot X-Men, I will start a personal petition for him to play Beast. It's Mr. Spencer Perry.
I was thinking you were going to say that. I was going through my head, which X-Men have beards? And the only one I could come up with was Beast, even though his is blue and covers his entire body.
By the way, just on that subject, and it is a very fair point, I never really thought about it until now, but a couple of my friends told me the same thing. It's like, how do you get from Nicholas Hoult to Kelsey Grammer? There seems to be no correlation there between those two performances. I literally don't know how it happened.
You know, what is weirdly interesting is that, Beast was on a TV screen in the first X-Men, or the second X-Men, for like 2 seconds, and that guy kind of looks like Nicholas Hoult.
Just a bit. Of course, I can't say what looks like a shaved you, because I've never seen you without a beard, but hey-ho. Also joining us is a guy who often comes onto our show. He's often underestimated, but he always brings a performance by the end of the show that makes us realise he's the fucking coolest. He's our Quicksilver. It's Mr. Matt Thompson.
Wow, and Quicksilver was awesome in Days of Future Past, so I'm going to take that as the greatest compliment ever. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. And
does that mean I'm your father?
Oh yeah. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
No, you think so see, that makes me Trask. I think I'm doing a good thing, but I really haven't thought it through. I'm a terrible, terrible midget man. Finally joined us.
With a porn stash.
No, I wouldn't look good with that. I would not look good with that. But I would look.
He did, though. He looked really good with that stash.
He looked great with that. I didn't think of it once that this is. Because, obviously, whenever someone gets the stash look, whether it's fucking Sarsgaard not Sarsgaard, what's his name from Green Lantern? What's the guy's name? It is Sarsgaard, is it? Peter Sarsgaard? Yeah. And I'm always, anytime someone has that kind of look, all I can see is Jamie's look. He looks like a goddamn child molester, or whatever he says. But no, it didn't. That's how good Dinklage is in this movie. Didn't think of it once. Finally, it is the triumphant return of a guy who's been away from our lineup for far too long. So I guess that makes him our Cyclops. Film critic, Mr. Gabe Toro. Welcome back, sir.
I was kind of hoping to be Apocalypse. I am the rocks of the eternal shore.
Oh my god, that was just like the 90s cartoon. That was dead
Crash
on.
against me and be broken.
Now you're kind of doing a Bane thing.
Yeah.
Bane was doing an Apocalypse thing.
That's a good point, actually. I have to ask real quick, does he have that voice in the movie in 2 years, or not?
Look upon the future and tremble. I'm going to teach you. First you have to do the Bane, and then you have to bring your chin closer to your chest and do it again. That's how you get Apocalypse.
And then you synthesize it, remember? Because they kind of did that, clearly they did some kind of post work on that voice, too.
Okay.
Oh yeah, it's the Tim Curry and Legend thing. No one has that.
There you go, Tim. Oh, okay.
No, I'm not saying Tim Curry is Apocalypse. That's
That's so cool, but I was like, oh, he can't. He's the poor man's in terror.
To answer Jamie's question, I think it totally depends on what kind of voice we're getting for Thanos, because unfortunately right now what we're going to have to deal with is the fact that if the DC universe gets far enough down the line that we get a Darkseid, and obviously we're getting Thanos, and we've got an Apocalypse, so we've got three big burly guys with the same shaped head. You assume they'd all sound the same, but I really, really hope to God that they don't. So, assuming Vin Diesel plays Thanos and Gabe plays Apocalypse, which I'm really gunning for now, I've got to tell you, then you'd just rip off the animated series of Superman, but you just get Michael Ironside for Darkseid. Just get him to reprise his role. He was good Darkseid.
The guy I wanted for Apocalypse was who's the guy from 12 Years a Slave?
Which one?
Chiwetel Ejiofor?
Yeah, Chiwetel Ejiofor is actually the guy I would want to play Apocalypse, because I've seen him in villain roles before, and I'm like, why not him? He's physically not intimidating, but I could see him.
He doesn't have the bass. He doesn't have that bass in his voice.
But yeah, exactly. So
you can fix that though.
I shall not forget this impudence.
All right, enough auditioning. Let's move on. Before we begin, folks, I have had a special request from a dear friend of mine, someone who I actually work with. My darling work colleague, Miss Natasha Connor, has asked me to give her a shout out on the show. Miss Natasha Connor, you wonderful person, consider yourself shouted at, and that will be £5 for that service. Anyone can have themselves shouted at on the show. By all means, checks, please send them into the mail to me. With that being said, let's get to the round table. Goes without saying, spoiler-filled dissection of X-Men Days of Future Past.
Are we going to talk about this all day or do it? We're going to do it.
Overall, I thought the movie was splendid. I did have some problems with the first half, and I was starting to feel a bit uneasy. We'll get into the specifics later. And right now, these problems are nitpicks, but I'm worried that the more that we explore them tonight, they're going to open up into giant craters. My issues were essentially twofold. One, I thought the exposition was clunky, repetitive, and a little bit lazy. And exposition can be the death of a film like this. Take that with a pinch of salt, because this is a very tricksy plot and there's a lot to explain, and I'm not sure I could have done a better job. Second problem was that I really started to feel some repetition and fatigue as far as some character beats and some visual moments went. There were moments here, specifically with Magneto and Mystique, that the X-Men movies have done before, some of them to death. And I came into this film expecting a slam dunk, that this one was going to be the best in the series so far. And I was suddenly realizing that I couldn't say that. The storytelling and the character moments, they weren't quite matching up to X2 or First Class. That was the first half. The second half, however, was fan-fucking-tastic. I love Hank's line around, I guess, the 70-minute mark. Power's back on. And Charles says, yes, it is. Because at that point, the film was absolutely unstoppable. And bar one note was everything I wanted it to be. My greatest fear going into this film was that we knew it wasn't the last one. And to me, Days of Future Past should at least feel like it's the last story. You can't get any bigger than this. You're preventing the utter extinction of both human and mutant kind by going back into the past and erasing the timeline. And I didn't want this film to be telling that story and at the same time, we'll see you in 2 years for X-Men Apocalypse. And it doesn't. The only thing that's in this movie setting up the next film is after the credits, and I think we'll get to that later. If this was the last X-Men movie, it would totally work and I would totally be happy. They really do go all out in terms of size and spectacle, and they're not once holding back stuff for the next one. They'll worry about that later. They're focused. And in this film, the fucking bodies are hitting the floor at the ends. And I just love how they don't restrain themselves and go artsy-fartsy on that. They don't cut away and imply death. They take an almost sadistic pleasure in the fact that this story allows them to do the one thing that other comic book movies don't get to do. Kill the heroes. So the Sentinels stab them, they burn their faces off, and at one point with Colossus I was just like, stop ripping him apart, he's already dead.
Phil, can I add something real quick? The opening shots, I have to give a lot of the MPA a lot of credit for those shots, because usually, you know how nitpicky they are, and they literally will bitch to filmmakers about frames. If you remove these frames, then we'll give you your rating. There's shots of dead bodies being rolled out like dirt.
Yeah.
In a PG-13 movie.
As long as they're not naked, it's okay.
But I was stunned to see that, and like it was like, holy shit! Like my jaw was to the floor. I was shocked to see that in a movie like this. I have to give him a lot of credit for that. I didn't mean to interrupt you, buddy, but
no,
like
I was going to say, let's not get started on those autopsy photos. God damn it! And the ending was exactly what I wanted it to be. I actually went into this movie surprisingly spoiler-free. And it's really amazing. I'm very proud of myself. Jamie had an advantage on me, which maybe we'll talk about later, but I didn't want to know. On Captain America Winter Soldier, I saw every trailer, every TV spot, every clip. On this one, I didn't. So there was a lot of things that I didn't know for sure were going to happen. And I was so into the second half that I didn't even think about the fact that fucking Cyclops was going to show up at the end, and when he did, I cheered. And that character's been treated pretty poorly by these films, so it's really some kind of miracle that I feel like. I think it's because I like James Marsden. Me and Jamie both do. And I'm a softie. I'm a sucker for happy, melancholy endings, especially when the characters deserve it. And I think, never mind the other characters, after all the pain he's gone through in these movies, I think Wolverine deserved a happy ending. He deserved a rainbow. I think about how every single previous film's left him. In X-Men 1, he won the day, but he still had that gaping void about where he came from and he needed to find out. X2, he lost Jean. X3, he killed Jean. The Wolverine, he let Jean's memory go, but then he had to leave.
To be fair, he seemed really happy at the end of X3. Even after he killed Jean.
Yeah.
Like,
I kind of...
and what about this romance with Jean? He knew her for like a few months, and all they did was flirt, and she was married to Cyclops. I kept getting annoyed by that.
Okay, this isn't a trilogy retrospective. I didn't know I was going to open up a can of worms there. But I'm just saying this is how I perceive it. It's like the guy, doesn't really get to have a break, really. Yes, there was that horrible shot of X3 where he's on the balcony. It's like, tomorrow's a brand new day. But I just kind of I just sweep that aside, really. And of course, at the end of the Wolverine, Charles and Eric pick him up from the airport and they say, hey, you think things suck now? Come with us. And I just love how we can talk and debate about that ending and exactly where it's set in the timeline. And if any of the events of the previous movies, at least in the initial trilogy, have actually happened. You assume X1 happened, but then again, I don't even know if it did, because we don't know where the hell Magneto is. We'll talk about that. We will get into it. But I think the reason that I'm always happy, and this, bouncing and beaming, is that this series of films, it keeps on going, and it is amazing to think it's been 14 years. And we get to have these conversations, these intelligent debates and arguments. I loved Winter Soldier. I adored it. But it doesn't give you this. It doesn't give you the meat on the bones that these films do. It's far richer than anything else out there. And one last point I just wanted to make, because I know the other guys have burst into talk, and I'll let them now. But one other point I wanted to make, and I already alluded it to, is just how stunningly gorgeous the film is. Newton Thomas Sigel is Bryan Singer's longtime director of photography, one of the best working today, but I will ascertain that this film is his finest work to date. I saw the film in a flawless digital 2D production, and even if I'd enjoyed nothing else, I'd be going back to see it again tomorrow because of that. This film, think about it, it covers a huge amount of ground. Lots of varied locations, lots of varied tones. We go from the absolute most sci-fi setting possible to the funky 70s, to the not too distant future, to the recesses of the human subconscious. And one guy's in charge of making sure the look stays consistent and goddamn beautiful. The man deserves an award for this film. I'm not saying the film's good enough for any other kind of awards. Personally, I think it's an 8 out of 10. It's a strong film, but I don't think it's anything better than that. But as far as cinematography goes, the man deserves some fucking recognition. He really does. Anyway, moving forwards, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to let Jamie go next because he's been Singer's biggest fan, and he's been championing any kind of movie that Singer does, even in those Jack the Giant Slayer days. I think that alone gives him second dibs on discussing the movie. Jamie, the floor is yours.
I'll just be brief on this. I don't think it's not the best it's not the best X-Men movie. It's not the best X-Men movie Bryan Singer's done. It's not even one of Bryan's best movies per se. I think you would easily say Usual Suspects is a better movie. I think X2 is superior. I think Superman Returns is a superior movie to Days of Future Past. But it does what it has to do. It's really good. We'll talk about more details later, but that's my brief overview because I know we have 3 other gentlemen who I'd like to hear their opinions of. So I really liked it. I mean, I've seen it twice, and there's no other movie I've seen this year. I mean, I really wanted to see. About 30 minutes into it, I already wanted to see it again, actually, and I was amazed how fast it moved. I mean, for a movie that had to get a lot of plot out. I mean, the movie is just over 2 hours, and it just flies by. I don't know what you guys thought of that. Good performances. I certainly had some issues with its politics of how it treats certain characters compared to others. I called bullshit out big time. But again, we'll get to that in a few minutes. So, who's next, Phil?
Matt.
I really enjoyed it. I have to temper that, though. I was a little disappointed in the sense that, I don't get too attached to comic books or the stories. I'm very, do whatever you want with source material. I don't care, blah, blah, blah. But X-Men was the one I really enjoyed from the cartoon when I was a kid. Laugh at me. So I've always really liked X-Men, even when I've been mixed on some of the movies. And I really liked the trailers for this one. And like Jamie, I got a hold of an early script, and I really enjoyed that. And then I saw the movie, and I was really pumped for it, and I really wanted it to be great. And I thought it was a B+. I liked it a lot. I thought the acting was really good. I mean, the cast in this movie is just fascinatingly good. But I actually, kind of the reverse of Phil, I thought the pacing kind of slowed down a bit. I became a little bit less interested in the second half. I also thought some of the exits were weird. Like Magneto's exit from this film is just odd to me. It's kind of like, okay, I guess I'll go home now. Bye, guys.
It's pretty bullshit.
So he flies off. I also think, again, the movie is a little weird in the sense of Magneto's philosophy being treated as bullshit when he's clearly right in the sense that if this goes on, they're going to annihilate not just mutants, but the rest of humanity. Also, like Jamie, I think X2 is better. I think First Class is better, but First Class is my favorite, so that's hardly, attacking Days of Future Past. I liked it a bunch, and I'm hoping expectations just got in the way, and then I'll like it a lot more the second time around when I'm not overthinking it. So, it was a good flick, though. I can't wait for the next one.
Spencer.
I definitely agree with you, Phil, that it's one of the best looking comic book movies that we've ever seen. I remember sitting in the theater and thinking this is the best looking X-Men movie they've ever done. And, I had seen a couple of them last year just as like a revisit, and they really don't hold a candle to this one. And, I really enjoyed the movie, which is saying a lot because when I saw it, I was going on like 5 hours of sleep and had been traveling all day and then worked all day. So, when you see a movie and you're sleepy and then you like it, it's probably a pretty good movie, at least for me, because normally I hate movies when I'm sleepy. But what I thought was, what was really weird for me about this movie was it was the first movie that, I ever did a set visit for that I actually have seen on the big screen. And if I may, I would like to tell a weird story from the set of that movie.
Please.
Story time.
So, when we were on the set, they were going out of their way to be super secretive about everything. The talent would come in to talk to us, and they would look at the unit publicist and say, what am I allowed to talk about? And they would run down this list of, or they would say, what am I not allowed to talk about? So they would run down this list of like 6 things that they weren't allowed to talk about in our interviews. And when we did all our interviews in the foyer of the X Mansion, so anytime that was on the screen, I was like, I've sat in the chair right there. That was weird. And between interviews, we were just walking around looking at the set, and I looked down and I saw this piece of paper that it was a breakdown of the set with a shot list that I guess they had done a couple days prior, and it was like scene 207, Wolverine discovers the new future. And it was for that scene in the movie when Wolverine walks down the stairs and he sees Jean and Storm and all of them. And I was like, man, these people, they went out of their way to not tell us anything about the last 20 minutes of this movie. And then I found a piece of paper that told us the ending of the movie. And then there was also, they didn't want us to know that someone had accidentally said that Mystique was who they were going at, who Trask was going after. And for some reason, they wanted us to not write about that. They were like, they shouldn't have said that. Please don't write about that. And then it was in the first 5 minutes of the movie. Oh, well. I like Days of Future Past. It's really great. I need to see it again when I'm not sleepy.
Stick that on the
headline,
poster.
That's the headline in the TV spot. It was really good when I was sleepy.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I got a feeling that our good friend Mr. Gabe Turner might disagree with yes, so Gabe, why don't you share our enthusiasm, sir?
Jamie said that he had read the script, and I haven't, and I hadn't, and I have the distinct feeling we had the equal amount of surprise upon watching the movie, which is not much. I don't think we can get around this, and maybe this is a failing of the genre. I hope I'm not opening a can of worms, but this movie is fucking dumb. How many movies have we seen about time travel? Now how many movies has Simon Kinberg, the credited writer for this film, how many movies has he seen about time travel? And why do I feel like those two issues, our time travel movies and his time travel movies, why do I feel like those are the only two things at play here with the actual time travel in the film? This is the easiest I've ever seen it, where they're in the future and they say, we gotta send somebody back into the past. And everyone says, sounds legit. Who do we send? Wolverine says, I'll do it. I've never done that before, but sure, I'll do it. No big deal. And then he arrives in the past, and he says, I'm from 50 years in the future. What? That's ridiculous. No, I'm for serious. Oh, okay then. Like, somebody made an argument that I think is really interesting. I don't remember who said it, but in regards to all of these superhero movies, the fact is that if you saw somebody who started flying, if you saw somebody who started shape-shifting, whatever, it would change your fucking life. People would be rioting in the streets. Religion would be a complete and total, redefinition, So now you have those characters traveling through time. It's like a double whammy of ridiculousness. And the thing about mutants as opposed to other heroes is that one of the things I found weird about it, and this isn't First Class, there's that scene where Professor X, the kid, he sees Mystique, the kid, and he reads minds, she shapeshifts, and he says, "I thought I was the only one." Why would you think that reading minds is exactly the same as shapeshifting? Why would you equate those two things? He should have been like, "I can read minds, and you're some blue scaly fucking thing. Get away from me. We have nothing in common." But instead, all these mutants band together.
That would have solved a lot of problems, actually.
Yeah, it really would have. But so I think there's too much ridiculousness heaped on top of each other within this movie, and nobody really views it as a human issue, which it speaks more to how these movies are basically about some sort of higher class, in this case because of evolution, how some sort of higher class deals with the lower class. This is the Dark Knight problem, where you have, Batman saying, "the people," and Bane saying, "the people," and you never hear from the actual people. So you don't know what they're actually going through. People in superhero, I'd love to be a person in a superhero movie because they seem like the most optimistic fucking people on the planet. This dude throws a stadium at the White House. And the president says, "You know what? That one girl decided not to shoot me. I don't think I'm going to stage war against the mutants." He threw a stadium at you. In no way. But the people are like, they actually fucking show the newspaper. And the newspaper says, "Mutant saves the president."
That was egregious. I really like this movie, but I'm with you on that one, Gabe. I was like, I'm glad they found that newspaper that gave away everything.
At least it didn't spin, right?
That was the same shit.
And then a character runs up, pops out of the
Boy found in fridge eats own foot.
Dog kills cat self.
At the end of Avengers, where New York has been obliterated by the worst attack on domestic soil, and the headlines are like, "Look at these superheroes, aren't they amazing?" That's like if on 9/11 there was a headline like, "Hey, Jamie saved a kid."
Oh,
it's not all bad, guys. I wish people in superhero movies, particularly the media, are the nicest people. Now, my issue, I viewed this film through two prisms, and that's sort of like my critic prism, where I'm like looking at this in a more rational way, where the movie doesn't make sense in a logical sense. I hate that there are people like, you hear those critics occasionally, "Oh, this is a smart blockbuster." Shut the fuck up. I also heard like, "This is way confusing." Don't be a fucking moron, please. Anyway, but it doesn't make sense as a movie. Like, here's an example: they go to Washington D.C., they need help. They call Quicksilver. Quicksilver steals the movie, and he saves the day. And he clearly has the most useful power. Then they leave. They go to they globetrot.
They go to France.
They come back to Washington, D.C. They need to save the president. And the dude with the most powerful power, "Oh, don't call him. Don't worry about it. We already used him. We don't need to use him again." But, this dude with knives in his hands, that's going to be real fucking helpful. I don't understand how Wolverine's like, they need to help Wolverine to inspire Professor X. And then they call in an assist from old Professor X who talks to young Professor X, which is stupid because he's like, "What do you need to do? Hope. That's it? Whatever." But at that point, Wolverine's job is over. You don't need to send him back in time. Send him back. What purpose does he have after he inspired Professor X? Because he doesn't do shit in that final battle.
He has to get abducted by Stryker, but not really Stryker. Yeah. I've got nothing.
So I guess he never gets the adamantium skeleton, but he gets to have sex with Mystique for the rest of his life. So it's a pretty solid win. Now, what I'm saying is that I'm viewing it from a critical perspective. It doesn't work. Now, viewing it from a comic book fan, because I did grow up with the X-Men, I did like these characters, I did enjoy these characters, to the point where I was actually extremely upset with Colossus being pulled in half. That's deeply upsetting to me. But now, my comic issue is that it doesn't feel like, they keep running away from the essence of the X-Men. Because here's the reason why, and the weekend numbers are coming in, and Days of Future Past did not do super business. It didn't do as well as some of the other superhero films, and it's going to finish way below X-Men The Last Stand.
Not about that,
Well, I mean, opening weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Even with 3D and inflation. It's pretty bad. But the reason why X-Men does not cross over, or at least this film version of X-Men, the reason why it doesn't cross over is because it's missing what's special about the X-Men comics. Which is not that so-and-so could shoot lasers. It's not that, civil rights allegory, because no one really gives a shit. It's because of, and I'm going to wrap this up, don't worry, I'm talking for a very long time. But it's because the X-Men are such hormonal characters, They're so ridiculous and so overheated and so melodramatic. Everybody sleeps with each other. Everybody breaks each other's hearts. Everybody's friends, and then they're enemies, and then they're brothers, and then they're parents. And, there's so much soap opera. And these movies have done their part to run so far away from that, and it's so disappointing. And that's why, because that's why comic readers have connected with the X-Men over the years. That's why they've been so popular for so long. That's the same thing for Spider-Man, Whereas, other characters, they change creative teams or whatever, they change storylines and they go through peaks and valleys. But the X-Men and Spider-Man have been so popular because of that connection. And with the X-Men, it's just, it's so hormonal, and the movies keep running away from this. I don't understand that. My favorite scene in the film is because the fact is the X-Men aren't superheroes because they fuck up. They screw everything up. They screw everything up. And my favorite scene is the scene where Mystique has disguised herself as the Vietnamese gentleman, or was he Thai? What was he?
I think he was Vietnamese.
Yeah, he was Vietnamese, and
that's what it was.
Oh, Jenny.
And that's
my mutant power is racism.
Sounds about right. So they have that scene where Mystique is there, Trask is there, Stryker is there, and no one can get shit done. You see Magneto throw a stadium later, but nobody can seem to hurt each other in this scene. And it's classic X-Men, because you've got Stryker completely debilitated. He can be taken out right there. Trask is, I'm sorry, all due respect, he's a little person. Not hard to kill. And Mystique is there doing super martial arts, and she can't get anything done. Meanwhile, you have Magneto saying, you know what, I'm going to use this opportunity. Instead of changing history, I'm going to let loose a little vendetta. And I'm going to try to come after Mystique. And you have Beast saying, I'm going to let loose my own personal vendetta and finally take the opportunity to kill Magneto because he broke my heart with Mystique and everything like that. Meanwhile, Wolverine is having a fucking anxiety attack. Wolverine's just like, I can't. And then you have Professor X over there who's like, I could use my mental powers, but then I wouldn't be able to walk. And if I couldn't walk, I couldn't strut. It is classic X-Men. Everybody has different interests. And, I love that scene because there's so many different conflicts playing out, so many different petty vendettas playing out. It's so different from, the world is going to end. It's going to change in history. Everyone's going to die. And instead, these guys are just like, I need to do my shit. It's like an episode of Real Housewives. It says, I got to be me. That's just what I am. I just do me, you do you. You know, that's what it is. And I love that. And I wish the movies were like that more often instead of just kind of a generic framework for like apocalyptic end of the world scenarios and fighting humans and mutants and stuff like that. These characters are deeply hormonal, and in the movie they're just chess pieces.
Gabe, I really hope that one day you get to pitch an X-Men sequel so that you can get in the room with executives and say, have you guys seen Real Housewives? We're going to do that.
Absolutely. There needs no. You know what?
O'Donnell will be like, sold.
All joking aside, and I'm not going to go into this too much, but they need to do an X-Men movie that has nothing to do with an adventure or violence or anything like that. They need to do an X-Men movie, and I think you could do this, but they need to do an X-Men movie where they're dealing with relationships, where they're dealing with romantic relationships, friendly relationships, where everyone's just having issues and shit. You know, they did entire issues of the comic where these guys would just get into arguments.
To be fair,
and it was fun to read.
Does the comic cost $150 million or whatever to make a movie of?
Well, the movie shouldn't either.
I totally think it would be. I would love to see that movie because I like these characters. But who else would go see that movie?
Not a lot, but if the budget's low, you can get away with it.
But the cast isn't going to let the budget be low unless you're saying do this with like the D-list X-Men.
Okay, do it with the D-list X-Men.
That was my pitch for like a fourth Batman movie with Nolan. Just have Michael Caine clean the Batmansion for a day. That's the movie. He drinks his tea. You know, he reads the paper.
Stunning conclusion.
Exactly, and you play the theme, and it stars Michael Caine. It costs $200 million.
I saw a bat the size of a tangerine. Or something.
What does he order at that restaurant? I want to know.
It's true. I still don't know what the hell it is. I turned the subtitles on.
Have we considered that he was actually at that restaurant because the bandit who sold the gems or whatever was there and he's hunting him down?
And he just happened to see his adoptive son right there with his new wife.
Coincidence.
Like, oh, hey, coincidence. Hey, I had a double whammy day.
Then you just break into that Inception Mumbai chase music and he just leaps across the table after the bandit. See you later, Bruce!
I want to see this movie more than Batman v Superman.
Dawn of the something or other. I'm not quite sure.
I was about to say Dawn of the Apes, but
never mind. Move on. I do think though that there is a compromise to be made, Matt. Not exactly what Gabe's pitching, although that would be nice.
Yeah.
But to me, I mean, X-Men's a soap opera. The reason why the Dark Phoenix saga in the comics is, so celebrated is, because it is exactly about that. It's only about characters at this point that we've grown to love. It's not about the bigger issues. It's never once they even talk about tolerance and stuff and that. It's about a woman who gets possessed by an alien and then some other alien dudes show up to kill the alien, but they're saying, hey, back off our friend and my love and all that stuff. And if you do the Phoenix saga properly, and I'll talk about this a lot later, that's what you're going to get. If you do it properly, all you're talking about is character relationships. I just feel like
totally do relationships. I mean, First Class was a lot of relationships.
Yeah.
The cartoon was relationships. So
yeah.
we're talking about that. Like, that cartoon was horribly melodramatic. If you look back...
Oh, yes. I loved it.
By the time you get to season 4, previously on X-Men, oh, fuck it. Never mind.
I think what you meant to say was previously on X-Men.
That's true.
There's that great bit where Wolverine is fucking pissed off at Cyclops because of some shit that he did, which hasn't happened in the movies. And then he goes to Cyclops' car, he cuts the top off, says, "Tell Cyclops I made him a convertible."
That's right.
That needs to be in a movie.
Isn't it? Yeah. I'm conscious of the fact that we don't have Spencer for so long. So Spencer, I'm not quite sure. I'm going to let you have free reign. You can either pick at one of Gabe's points. You could talk about a real wonderful positive, or you could talk about a real niggling negative. Whatever you like, sir.
Can I talk about something that is kind of baffling to me about the movie?
You may.
Which is the implication of the ending, in that they really went out of their way to retcon movies out of the series. Obviously X-Men 3 didn't happen, but did X-Men 2 happen? And clearly the Wolverine didn't happen at all, and that movie just hasn't even been out a year.
Yeah, I know.
But also, what's interesting is that if the Wolverine didn't happen, but then with that ending where they pull Wolverine out of the water, and he's laying on that metal bed that it's meant to look exactly like the Weapon X table that he goes down in when he gets the metal put on his bones. But then Stryker's there, but it's not Stryker, it's Mystique. So are they saying the Wolverine didn't happen, but X-Men Origins Wolverine did, and it wasn't Stryker, it was Mystique?
Well, it's clearly not, because, like...
In the script, it was just Stryker. I don't know what they were doing.
I don't know what they're doing, but, like, when did Stryker die, though? Like, all it is, like, he was Stryker. I mean, I don't...
Maybe...
I feel like it's just their way of getting Wolverine into X-Men Apocalypse.
Yeah. Could be.
Maybe Stryker has contact lenses.
Maybe Stryker's a shapeshifter.
Why the fuck are we talking about Stryker all the time? Why the fuck does he keep showing up in these movies?
I was wondering that
he's been in 4 of them.
Why is he the most important character in the series?
He's the Lex Luthor of the series. Like, they keep insisting that he just shows up, and, like, he was awesome in X2, and he served his purpose, and, like, Brian Cox shows up and was just, like, so boss in that role. And, of course, like, Bryan Singer talks about, like, he showed up on set first, and he's like, oh, by the way, Brian, like, I'm gonna give him a southern accent. It's like, and, like, it worked out. And it's like, why they kept going back, and it's, I don't know when the obsession with Stryker really started. Like, they did X-Men Origins, and, like, well, he's gotta play a role in that, supposedly, I guess. Danny Huston did what he could. Now, I mean, but I love the fact that, like, clearly he goes from being, like, a 50-year-old man to being a 30-year-old man. No reason.
Hey, you know what? I'm totally in favor of wiping X-Men Origins out. I'm cool with it.
Yeah, but I agree. I think this wipes out this
wipes out everything. Well,
this wipes out everything. I was having that argument last night on Twitter, and people say, no, it doesn't. It's like, no, this wipes out everything,
Rogue has the
Brian's
white
movies.
Streak. Rogue has the white streak, so some form of X-Men 1 had to have happened.
Or maybe she, like, maybe she just grabbed some random old person and just fucking, like, we know, the movie is very vague about that, but for people to say, like, oh, they're giving the finger to Ratner is not true, because Singer he's abolishing his own movies, at least the second one, because people forget Jean died twice in these movies. She was dead at the end of the second one. So it's like
we wanted the quiet, talkative X-Men movie. Maybe that's the next one. It's just sitting down and explaining exactly what happened for 90 minutes.
And they talk about Apocalypse. Yeah.
Well, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how they handle it in this third Wolverine movie, because you can't do a follow-up to the Wolverine because it didn't happen. You can't do the movie that's, because they gave themselves leeway with the Wolverine, where they were like, the movie ends, and then the post-credit scene, they were like 5 years later. So, assuming they're setting up that 5-year gap for whatever movie they wanted to do. But now they can't do that movie.
What I love is they're filming the post-credit scene for the Wolverine, and they know that the movie is actually going to wipe the Wolverine out.
Yeah.
There's something very fun about that to me.
Except for the people who made it. Because they kept insisting, no, James directed that post-credit sequence. Like, no, he fucking didn't. He so did not.
Maybe they'll completely fuck with us next time, and the next Wolverine movie will just be called The Wolverine again.
The Wolverine again.
Like the Muppets.
It's James Mangold again.
Yeah,
Yes.
Apparently.
How does he feel about this?
The check's cleared, so I'm sure.
Do you really? I mean, would you really care if your movie's wiped out if it still exists? I mean, people can still watch The Wolverine.
Exactly.
It depends on if I was fucking told.
It'd be funnier if they wiped out an Aronofsky movie.
Basically the issue that we're all wondering is okay, so Trask does not die.
No.
What does that mean for the future? What does that create? What really happens? Oh, so he didn't create the Sentinels? Are we even sure about that?
Bill Duke joke off the port bow. That's what I
don't yeah. Dinklage ages into Bill Duke. That's pretty unusual.
Well,
where's that movie?
What I especially love about this, ignoring the silliness of Peter Dinklage becoming Bill Duke, how is Trask alive in X3 if Mystique killed him 30 years beforehand? Thus kickstarting the Sentinel program.
Ooh.
It's not the same guy.
It's his son.
I was going to say, do they actually call him Trask in that movie? I know the credits, but I haven't seen X3 in so long.
He is.
No,
Yeah.
he's not.
He's Trask's half-son or something.
Maybe
Billy.
it's just
He's
an
Billy.
There's just a
he's
line
an
of dialogue where
unrelated
they
guy.
say, there's just a line of dialogue where it says he liked black chicks. And that's it.
He's an unrelated guy named Trask.
Yeah, I agree.
There's a lot of Trasks in the government. Like they
Strikers.
explain how Emma in X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Oh God, I forgot
is-
she was in that
is
movie.
Just another Emma, and it's not the White Queen. Even
It's
though
just another
she
Emma
has-
with exactly the same powers.
Yeah, because those sorts of coincidences.
See, this is
happen.
the problem where you start throwing in side characters just to wink at the audience, because eventually you might actually need to use those characters, and it doesn't match up at all.
That's what I didn't like about the well, I'll save it for later. The Quicksilver bit, that exchange, because it's shit that Singer doesn't do, and he's never really done that in the past. In fact, Mike Doherty has told the story a couple of times now. There's the great scene in X2 between Mystique and Nightcrawler, even the voice, and like how he wanted to reference how they're related in the comic books. And Singer shot him down saying that kind of bullshit is stupid, and it's pandering crap, and it completely deviates from what we're trying to do, Mike.
And then
Let's be filmmakers instead of fanboys, Mike. And
generally it's a
very
good attitude.
demeaning.
I will say that got a big laugh when I saw the movie, though.
Yeah, but from who? Nerds?
Well, yeah, probably. I
But
mean, I
that's
saw
the
that
point,
the
though.
art
It's
body.
like, well, I mean, but my point being is that it's such a dumb moment, and it's like, really, like
It is
this
the kind of moment when you see it on Blu-ray, you're going to be like, oh my God, let's just skip this part. Let's just
Yeah,
go.
that I already eye rolled. You know, it's like, yeah. I mean, like there's a bit with Nixon where he says off the record, and then he turns on the tape recorder. Like 2 people in the audience laughed. I was one of them. You know, it's like I like that more than I did like the stupid Magneto joke about he might be your daddy.
So at this point, even though the fight is going to continue for many, many days, at this point, we do have to say goodbye to Mr. Spencer Perry. Lucky break for you, I think, Spencer, because, you know, we're still going to be here tomorrow talking about this timeline stuff and stuff. So
consider me the Quicksilver of the Days of Future Past episode of Movie Moan. You know,
that's
I
right,
was
you are
there when
very
I used to
useful,
be
but
there.
yeah, we don't need you. Now be good. You be good, Spencer.
Take it easy, guys.
All right, we'll see you soon. Take care, buddy. Now, guys, I just have to bring up something at this point because it's driving me crazy listening to all of this. I understand why you're frustrated, but I had to have the same conversation with the Movie Moan crew. I remember when we were talking about, ironically enough, another one of Bryan Singer's films, Superman Returns. And I said then, and I will say now, about the X-Men series, if you're going to talk and endlessly debate continuity issues, I understand why, but guys, you're on a hiding to nothing. You just have to let it go. It makes no sense. Now, I will preface that by saying at this point, for the future of the series, they've really got to nail this shit down. Okay, fine. Everything's wiped. From this point, everything needs to be super, super tight because that's how you make these movies from now on. So can I say, is it possible to let all of this go and as long as the continuity is tight from now on till the end of the series, which might just be one more film, let's say that's okay. Is that all right?
I really don't give a shit about continuity, largely. The issue is that this movie is all about continuity. It's about changing continuity so that instead of the Sentinels coming in and pulling Cyclops in half and giving me nightmares, Colossus, I mean, that instead, what happens? I don't know. Everyone's alive now? Like, everything is better? And nothing bad happens? Like, what's the status quo at the end of the
Is Senator Kelly trying to, like, do the Mutant Registration Act now? Like, something like that? Did something bad happen from this?
Are we ever even going to find out? Because X-Men Apocalypse takes place in the 80s.
No, I don't think we'll ever get back to the.
No, I don't think we're ever going to get back to the current cast ever again.
James Marsden, too expensive.
Well, I mean, you make that joke, but I mean, a lot of these actors were expensive, and like even getting someone like Ian McKellen back clearly was the case where Singer got him to come back.
Yeah, like, what's Magneto up to in this current, like, you know what I expected? I expected that end, first of all, it's shot through, like, a bar of soap or some shit, you know, with that gauzy, soap opera style. And Wolverine comes in, he's like, you're here, you're alive, you're alive. I expect him to open some door and, like, find, like, a bunch of hobbits jumping on a bed or some shit. or at least, like, Xavier and Magneto to, like, roll over in bed, like, drinking coffee. Like, Welcome back, old
Jamie
friend.
and I talked about this. Jamie
Yes.
and I talked a lot about this in the script, that we thought Magneto should have popped up at the end. But
Unfortunately, the draft we read was very more centered on those three characters, and it made a real effort of putting it. Actually, there's a lot of good Magneto stuff that got cut out.
yeah, like Mystique was at the school in the end as well.
Yeah, Mystique, she's completely, and Magneto was still kind of given the bum rush, but like we felt like if they had given like that moment where, and Phil actually said this too, he kept wanting a moment where McKellen takes a bullet for Stewart, and the draft we read, he did.
Yeah, there was this whole thing where like they're intercutting the goodbyes, like the whole White House thing is different, and as Magneto is leaving and Xavier and Eric are saying goodbye, we'll meet again another day, you're cutting to the future where Ian McKellen Magneto is actually dying, and it's Patrick Stewart saying goodbye, hopefully we'll get another chance, and you're cutting back and forth between it, and it was really good.
And it cuts back and forth of the young Magneto controlling the Sentinels, fucking shit up, and then the old Magneto stopping the Sentinels.
Yeah.
At the same time. And I remember thinking, like, this is going to cut together so good. Like, I remember thinking, like, oh, this will be in the movie. And I was stunned that, like, nope, gone.
See, that was the problem with reading the script, because I thought they actually made a lot of changes that were for the better, but there were points in that third act, and I wonder if this is why it didn't work as well for me as it did for, like, Phil, where I'm just thinking, oh, the script did this so well, and the movie is not.
No, see, here's the thing, guys. That didn't work for me. I was saying how I loved everything in the second half, bar one thing. And it's the fact that, I'm sorry, but I take this with a pinch of salt, because even though I'm saying this, I get the feeling Magneto is probably going to show up in X-Men Apocalypse, and obviously it's not Age of Apocalypse, but Magneto is going to fight Apocalypse, and it's going to be really, really cool and awesome and yada, yada, yada. But this should have been the end of Charles and Eric's story. I mean, they touch on it. I mean, I still gasped when they stabbed Ian McKellen, because that guy has never been touched. That's the point. It's just like, I liked how Wolverine commented on the fact that you're a survivor. It's like, finally, they called him out on that. They've never actually had the balls to actually hurt the guy. And they have the conversation where they say that...
Well, Phil, you bring that up, but like in the script, like that line's different. Like he says, like, you're a survivor, but I have all the time in the world. You don't. And
oh my God!
You might want.
You're not helping, Jamie.
We're ruining it for him.
You might want to rethink how you and Charles are acting to each other, and then that leads to them talking and like playing the game. And it's like, wow, that was a really poignant moment, and it turns into a joke. But I do want to say it annoyed me how they treated Magneto in the movie, just because this is the movie that says he was right. That everything he's bitching about and has been trying to stress to them, even in his extremist ways, he's correct. We should have been listening to this guy. And yet the movie still almost it's like arguing with someone about politics, and no matter what, they're still going to say, well, no, I don't feel that way. And it's like that way. It's like, no, they still have to insist that he's wrong.
The movie even tries for a second, where McAvoy, in that scene with Patrick Stewart, actually says everything he says is right, and Stewart's like, well, you never know. All right, let's just back off a second.
And it's like, that's such horseshit. Like, we've literally seen he was right the whole time. His approach was wrong, but he was right. We should listen to him. And I'm annoyed how the movie continues to insist he's not right. And I know, how can you do that with a straight face? And then it wants you to think that he's doing he does the most sensible thing in the whole movie when he points the gun at Mystique. And he's like, I'm sorry, but I have to do this. I have to save all of us. He's not talking about just mutants. He says the line in the movie. He says, I have to secure all of our futures by doing this. I'm sorry. And yet the movie's like, aren't you evil? And it's like, what?
No, I never felt that way. I felt it was very true.
But the movie acted like he's evil for doing that. It's like, what are you talking about?
I disagree. I know. Ooh. I thought I completely feel that at that point you didn't know who the hell you were supposed to side with. Some people perceive this as a weakness, because at that literal middle point of the film, I was like, okay, who's the villain at this point? Because I'm really fucking confused. There's three people. There's Trask, there's Mystique, and there's Eric, and I'm not quite sure exactly who I'm supposed to be feeling antagonistic towards. But I felt at that point, though, it made perfect sense. They were being completely true to the Magneto. Look, say what about X3? It's always been one of my favourite moments, as heinous as it is a wonderful dramatic moment. When he just, at the drop of a hat, after everything they've been through, he just dumps her ass. He's human. You're done. You're out. You're not beautiful anymore. Say she was so beautiful, or whatever it was. It made perfect sense to me. It just made the other characters like Eric and Wolverine look really stupid. There's like, oh, not again. No, this is the one thing we didn't see coming, that he's going to do this again.
Is it odd that I would love an X-Men movie that didn't have Xavier or anything? I just want, like, Magneto, maybe with Mystique, but just, I want to follow back. I've always found him the most interesting guy in any of these stories.
I will say to the movie's credit, though, like where Days of Future Past, where First Class is more Magneto's story, and he's the hero.
Oh yeah, this is Xavier's story.
It's Xavier's, and like while I loved McAvoy, and we talked about it when we were talking about First Class 3 years ago, we loved McAvoy's performance because he gave a new angle to Xavier. The fact he was this young guy, this young horny guy who was just like, it was really cool. Like, hey, he was young once. You kind of thought he's a bit of a pussy. Because here's a guy at Lencher who is a Holocaust survivor who's seen shit. And here's Xavier, as powerful as he is a pampered white boy. So it's like nice that you're idealistic, but you don't live in the real world. And that's where Eric's coming from. He's like, look, you're my buddy, but go live a life, man. I've lived it. And then come back to me and talk about how I'm wrong I am. And this is the one where while it's very questionable how it treats Magneto, it does give you Xavier's point of view. And yeah, McAvoy I thought was the MVP of the movie performance-wise. I know we're all over the place here, but I'm really loving this conversation. Is it impossible for people to get a good-looking Richard Nixon on screen? Like a one that looks like Richard Nixon?
This was a particularly comical-looking Nixon.
This was like Watchmen level bad, you know. And again, I give Brian a lot of credit. And I really like this movie, but it's like what the fuck, dude? Because I even asked Robert, our friend Robert Meyer Burnett, who saw the movie like a year ago. He saw Rough Cut, and I was like, "How's Nixon in this movie?" And he's like, "Oh, he's awesome." And I'm like, "Robert, who plays him?" Because they're kind of keeping it secret. And he's like, "I don't know actually." And so I stayed in the credits, and it was some actor. I don't know. They might as well have just said Richard Nixon. I mean,
himself. Oh, question mark.
Yeah, himself.
Let me, I'm going to tell a micro story, a very tiny story, about my, brother. He would watch the show Heroes.
Oh God.
I'm out.
And,
I'm still here.
We were talking about it. I had seen the show and I knew that it was, you know, very obviously a piece of shit. And, everybody disagrees on what the weakest point of that show is, but for me it was the writing, how the writing was so wildly inconsistent, and characterizations kept changing, and the stakes kept shifting in very arbitrary ways. It just felt poorly written, like it was being improvised as it was being written, you know, as opposed to being planned out, being detailed, and anything like that. Particularly the characterizations, so the characterizations kept changing. And so, and I mentioned this to him, and he said, I know, that's why I like it. It's very unpredictable. Which, I'm certain that's why a lot of people liked it. And that sort of makes sense. And to me, that's the vibe that I get from this new X-Men film, because, again, I don't care about continuity, but this movie is about continuity. This movie has to have continuity in order for there to be real stakes. Because there is no continuity, there's no real stakes. You know? Particularly when they establish early on, Kitty Pryde can time travel somebody else back a couple moments before they all died. So basically, she could have very easily, although they don't show this in the movie, she could have very easily, if Wolverine failed, she could have sent them all, or sent one of them back to like, however long in the past it was, a day, a couple hours, I don't know. And then the movie would have happened again. And they would have kept trying and trying and trying. There's no stakes there. But this is also based on the idea that Kitty Pryde has developed this power through evolution, which has never happened before. It's not a part of the earlier films. So you don't know what her limitations are. And if you don't know what her limitations are in this power, you don't know how she uses it. You don't know how she uses her powers. You don't know how much room for how much of a margin for error that she has.
Kitty Pryde is secretly Trask.
You're never really breaking into a sweat in this movie. You know, you're never like, I don't know what's going to happen. Meanwhile, you realize these characters have been dying over and over, night by night, again and again. So, like, this has become old hat. You know, the future is basically the comic books overall, where everybody keeps dying and coming back to life. And in the comics, there's no more suspense if you've been reading them for a good amount of time. So in the movie, there's no suspense because continuity matters that much.
Well, of course. I mean, that's part of the reason why I was saying I feel Days of Future Past should be the last one. Because at this point, you've really played that card, and there is going to be no jeopardy going forward. But that's a problem we'll deal with later. I also just think, yes, I agree the movie's about continuity, but it's suffering from the fact that it's a sequel to a series that already has a minefield of contradictory continuity before you've even seen this film. I challenge anybody to have done a better job at trying to navigate around this shit. I was amazed how little I cared about the fact that Magneto now has his powers and the cure didn't work. I just said, oh, cure didn't work.
Well, X3 kind of established that anyway with the last shot, with the chess piece moving.
Well, that's, we'll see you next time, bullshit. I always...
Yeah, and of course the post-credit scene with Xavier and his, twin brain dead
yeah,
brother.
Either way, it was loose enough that it was set up enough that I was like, whatever, let's go.
Okay.
We're good.
Well, doesn't Magneto get shot in the fucking neck in this movie?
Yeah, that's true, actually.
She grazed him or something.
And he's just like, oh well. He just gets a...
That's what I mean. It's like, for God's
that
sake.
went right...
Again, because I didn't see the movie, I didn't know what was going to happen, but I really, really felt that at this point, there's a great bit in... I'm such a geek here, but there's a great bit in episode 4 of X-Men the Animated Series, Season 1, when Xavier, because I've been rewatching them all in preparation for this, Xavier and Magneto go head-to-head. It's the first time in the show, but it's amazing how they've actually really, really built up the history between them. Even in 20 to 40 short minutes, they've managed to do that. And, Xavier's just far too powerful, and they don't have the whole my helmet blocks it stuff. Xavier just probes the guy's mind. He rips out the most horrible, painful fucking memories and brings Magneto to his fucking knees. And I really feel like, and I remember one of the issues of the comic where he just mind wiped him. He's just like, enough. Sorry, I'm just going to lobotomize you right now. And I really feel like at this point, that's what they needed to do. They needed the two of them to go head to head, and you needed some kind of finality to it. What happened was exactly, I was calling out before, but Jamie often likes this joke. It's literally true. Magneto, past Magneto, became Poochie. He said, I have to go now. My planet needs me. And he floated right up. And we didn't see him again. And I was like, yeah, exactly. And I was like, you're fucking shitting me. I don't believe this. Again. It's like when...
It read so much better in the draft, the way they were, it was doing the
well,
back
also,
and forth.
Magneto
but it was frustrating because we didn't see him at the end of the movie either, and we felt that we were owed a moment to see. Because my thing is always doing with this character and the way they portray these movies is that we're leading to the point where the guy's going to finally heal because he's a Holocaust survivor, and you can't ever heal from that fully. But that's what's always been fueling this guy for all these movies, and you feel like that's going to be the moment where it's like, all right. He can finally let go of all that anger. As Phil, you talked about there's a great moment where he has to think of his mother every time he's doing these great, powerful acts.
Yeah.
And how poignant that is and how sad it is. And so you think, when he's bringing up the stadium, he's thinking of his mom when he's doing that. Because he has to. Where he has to mentally go in order to achieve this power. And you feel like it's going to have that moment where, you see them running to school together. And, we're still waiting for that moment. And it's still going to happen. But you just thought, this was the story where it happened. And it's like, we're not gonna. Because that should have been the moment where Wolverine wakes up in the past and there's Lyncher just sitting there teaching a class. And it's like, nah. Even in the comics, they've established, the guy heals. He finally takes Xavier's side, or maybe not fully his side, but he finally at least fights alongside him, even though he doesn't fully agree with him. And
Well, in the comic right now, Xavier's dead, and Magneto is more. Well, that's happened many times, though.
Yeah, it has.
That he's taken up.
Well, that's the Age of Apocalypse story. Magneto is flat out full on the hero of Age of Apocalypse.
I really thought that this movie would end with Xavier wiped from the time stream dead.
I was wondering that too for a bit myself before I read the draft. I was like, are we going to like completely like just make something so radical? Because I kept hearing, oh, they're going to Star Trek it. And I mean, technically that's true. They did. But like, I thought like in a real radical sense. And no.
Well, do you think that's what they were trying to do with the ending of the script with Apocalypse? Because...
Go ahead and give it away.
Yeah, well, I mean, it leaked online and they tried to write it off as bullshit, but it wasn't. But at the ending of the script is Stryker loads Wolverine up, and it's actually Stryker, it's not Mystique. And then you cut to the desert, and Magneto's alone. You know, he's made his choices, pretty much abandoned, and he's eating, and like something crashes outside, and he goes outside, and like you see Apocalypse, who says something like, "I've crossed rivers of time to find you," and then Apocalypse like takes over Magneto's body, and that was the end of the script.
Right.
And I wonder if that's what they're still going to do with the actual movie, even though they cut the tag.
I don't think they're going to do that, but I don't do that. I think it's obvious what the next movie is going to be. It's set in the 80s, so it'll probably be around 83, 84. I think it's going to be a combination. They say it's going to be a big biblical destruction movie. I think it's going to be that, but it's also going to be about AIDS, the AIDS crisis, except it'll be the legacy virus, and either Magneto's got it or Xavier's got it.
Isn't it kind of scary to try to mesh together two major comic book storylines at once, though? Considering X3 with the Cure and Phoenix?
I think Singer could do it though.
Everyone has AIDS!
But isn't it obvious they're going to do that though? I mean, like I think so.
Well, that would be
it's a giant gay allegory.
Wait, X-Men's a gay allegory?
What? If you're gay, you get AIDS, right? Come on, you're making a big leap here.
Unfortunately, when the AIDS crisis first hit, that's what people sadly thought was, oh, it's just gays, and that would be the same attitude in this movie. It'd be like, oh, don't worry, it won't get us. It's just mutants. Who cares?
There's a difference between.
And I'm already making my point already by just that fake line of dialogue.
Yeah,
like
it's just mutant. Who cares? Yeah, I could see a whole movie out of that, and I'm not joking.
I'm not kidding.
There's a difference between they're being interested in representations and being a gay guy as opposed to outward gay issues. Like the Registration Act that they talk about in the early X-Men films, it never exactly, I mean, you could draw that parallel, but they never exactly draw the parallel between the government's treatment of homosexuals. Plus, he takes, Bryan Singer, he takes the sexual out of homosexual. Why would he ever, these movies are so asexual. Like I talked about before with the hormonal issues. The thing that gets me is that X-Men First Class was by far the kinkiest of these X-Men movies.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie is basically the direct follow-up to that. And all of that kink goes out the window completely.
Well, it is interesting, though. Singer did have a lot to do with First Class. I mean, he directed some of it. So
yeah.
How much
did
all the kink come from Vaughn?
I'd buy it.
Can I just pitch something to you here, guys? Because you've been talking, and I just need a couple of minutes of your time to actually throw out perhaps a controversial view, but it's one I do believe in very, very strongly. And, bear in mind, I love the movie. I love Days of Future Past. But I really do believe, and this has nothing to do with what's going on right now with Singer, but I honestly believe that he shouldn't direct another one. Let's think about this statistically. Bryan Singer has directed 3 X-Men movies, never mind the hand that he's had in any others. That is enough for any director to say everything they could possibly have to say about one property, one character, before things start getting stale. I think some people are actually missing the fact that there is a lot of repetition. There's a lot here that feels old hat. I see a scene where Magneto's walking down a corridor and he's got 2 floaty balls and he kills 2 security guards with the floaty balls. Seen it. The Cerebro. There's a scene, the scene where Mystique, goes into a government office by impersonating the guy who owns the office, and then the secretary comes in and says, "What are you doing?" Seen it. That scene was elevated by the fact that she found the autopsy photos, and that bit was fucking sick and awesome. But there was, and by the way, and I need to just rant on this just for a couple of minutes, guys. I hope you'll appreciate this, but I never thought I'd say this. I never, ever thought I would say this. I am tired of Mystique. I am sick to death of this character. there are at least 5 scenes, and boy, that's a kindly estimate, in this film that are exactly the same. She shows up, she impersonates somebody, but she sucks at it, gets caught immediately, and then starts killing people with her legs. And it keeps happening again and again and again. And what's so weird is that every single one of these scenes is shot like it's her intro scene. Like the fact that she's going to morph's a big surprise to everybody. And, she does the initial morph, and then we get a shot and a close-up on her, pause, and then attack and fight and kill him with the legs. And it happened again and again and again. And I know in my heart of heart that the only reason that it's actually happening this way and that they didn't cut some scenes and were as ruthless to Mystique as they were to Rogue and other characters like Magneto, as you guys were talking about, is because it's Jennifer Lawrence. And I understand the commercial aspects of it, that obviously she's a movie star, you want to make sure she's in it as much as possible. I get it, but at the same time, it makes it a weaker film. And the biggest problem I have, and I couldn't believe I was going to say this, is the fact that the thing I've always loved about the X-Men movies is that they are equal opportunity comic book movies. Most of these things, you don't really get that many strong female characters. You will be lucky if you get one. And we had a franchise where the ratio of male to female characters was pretty much equal. The female characters were actually as strong and as interesting, more or less, Halle Berry, as the male characters. And it never felt like they were making them really butch kick-ass chicks to pander to either the female or the male audience. And that's why I really feel like the audience for the X-Men movies is pretty even on both genders. And this was the first X-Men movie where I felt like it was a sausage fest. I feel like the only female character that's really in the movie is Mystique. I feel like the only reason she's in it as much as she is because the actress is a movie star and it's just a commercial decision, not because she's instrumental to the story, or honestly, even that, an interesting character in this movie. And everyone else gets the shaft. And you guys can tell me in a bit about the Rogue stuff, because I still don't know anything except 2 frames in a trailer, which I saw in the first trailer. And
that's not that much.
Oh, I see a debate coming on.
I'd say 8 minutes, wouldn't you, Matt?
It's like a subplot, but it's not.
Oh well, explain the scene, and then you can tell me if it was superfluous or not. What was the Rogue stuff?
Okay, well,
Jane, I was gonna say, you want to go?
Well, no, I mean, we know they shot this stuff because we saw we saw behind the scenes stills and actually the teaser trailer, you saw some frames of it, so they shot it. We know that because, as a matter of fact, Havoc originally died, and they didn't shoot that. They just apparently they didn't even film it. They just changed that. No, originally after Wolverine has that berserker attack and he sort of slips between consciousness and attacks Kitty, originally they're having that meeting between Bobby, Eric, and Charles, and what do we do? Originally, they say we have to go get Rogue, where she's being experimented on. I believe at the old mansion.
Yeah, she's at the mansion.
She's now essentially the headquarters for the Sentinel experimentation. Again, with the World War II allegory.
That's why the Sentinels can shift and take powers, is because Rogue.
Because of Rogue, not because of Mystique. Yeah. Or Mystique started, but then they got Rogue to enhance it. So it was actually both of them. But of course, they made changes, blah, blah, blah. So Eric and Bobby go. Charles stays, and they go out to get Rogue. And Bobby is killed in the process. In fact, he's killed there was a certain character in the X-Men comic books who was killed in the Days of Future Past story arc. They were going to literally recreate that moment where they're burned alive by the Sentinels.
It was very violent, as I remember.
It was
Wolverine.
Very violent.
Even Wolverine.
No, it was another character actually.
That does happen to Wolverine.
It does happen to Wolverine, but it was another character I remember.
It was described as bloody ice or something like that.
Yeah, it turns from ice to blood, but it was really nasty. And then she comes back, and they're like, "Oh, where's Bobby?" And he's like, "Yeah, he didn't make it." It was an entire set piece in the future, where they had to go get her, they had to come back, they interacted with each other. Rogue ends up absorbing the pain, all the wounds that Kitty had. And everything's okay now. But in the finished movie, they clearly did some reshoots that Bobby's sitting there, and they just added some insert shots.
Well, we couldn't have all that stuff with Rogue because we needed another scene of characters firing a gun at Wolverine And somehow, some way, it just doesn't work.
I do love that every single shot of that is shot the same way, where we're supposed to go, oh my god, he healed.
This is exactly what I'm talking about.
I thought they did it really good in this one.
It was funny,
I actually
but...
really like that berserk. I think that might be the best Wolverine berserker attack. Was the thing with the mobsters.
That is a really good scene. But who is that chick he's banging?
I noticed she calls him Jimmy.
I know it's just Jimmy. Yeah, some mobster's daughter. That's all I know.
So wait, here's the question. By the way, we were talking about continuity. If the Wolverine movie is wiped out and he doesn't meet what's her face from John Carter, he never gets the name Wolverine.
Oh,
That's very true.
Oh no!
Now his name is Jimmy.
He picks it up some other way.
No, he's Jimmy Claus now. Who cares?
That is I never thought about that. That is such a good point.
It's
Like the ending doesn't. The ending just doesn't make sense because there are literally too many things to keep track of because this future has changed. You know, this movie just basically gives the middle finger to the butterfly effect. The concept, not the movie.
And
you know, but
so
yeah,
it
I
doesn't
do
tie things up in a bow at the end. It gives you something to leave and talk about. I understand
I don't
the
think it gives you
Magneto
anything.
thing's a
No.
problem. But
no, I think it's too far in the other direction. It doesn't give you something to talk about.
What the fuck have we been doing for 90 minutes?
I do wish it was a little sillier. Like, imagine Wolverine comes back and, like, Stryker's running the school.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense that everything would be reset to where it's supposed to be, except that there's no Sentinels. That's the only change. Meanwhile, you've invalidated all the major events of all the films, including the Phoenix, I guess, never showed up, or maybe she did.
Well, now they can show up again. This is their excuse to do it in the 80s with the new Jean Grey.
She's wearing a red dress.
Yeah, and her hair is now overtly red, which was annoying. It's like, guy, no.
Wasn't that her exact Phoenix hair? Am I wrong?
Yes.
I have Phoenix 3 in forever.
Oh, yeah, that was her Phoenix hair. It's just annoying. It's like,
It doesn't. None of it. You know, we don't know what happened with Wolverine. We don't really know what happened with Stryker. The ending almost plays like the fucking afterlife. Like it plays like the end of Lost.
Well, yeah.
It should have been like the ending of Back to the Future. Like instead, it's like which they were clearly going for. Like everyone, that's which was sort of funny because like Hank is like, "Oh, morning, Logan. Off to a rough start." And they're going, "You know what happened? Like clearly you're waiting for that day where he wakes up and he's like, oh, he finally's back." And it's like, whatever, fuck him. It takes Xavier a couple of minutes to realize like, oh wait, that's right. You have to come back. You just got back from the future.
Well, I was going to say, because I think Jamie and I have talked about this a long time ago before, he'd read the script or anything, where we sort of thought about how it might end and we pitched some things. And I'm pretty sure one of the things that we pitched, and maybe this would have helped you guys and it would have been a much better ending, a lot cleaner, is not have it end, back at the mansion or anything like that, seeing all these characters, but actually a reprise of the Senate scene from X-Men 1. It's old Charles, it's old Eric, but this time, they're standing together. This time they walk out together. I don't know if Senator Kelly's there or not, or whether there's a bill or not, but, it's just those guys, that simple act. And if they'd done that for me, I'd be like, okay, book's closed on those two, I'm fine. Yes, he floated away like Poochie, but I'll let it go. It's the end. If they'd done that, but I still love the ending. I mean, I just let the continuity go. It's not a problem for me.
It's a wonderful moment, in all seriousness. I actually loved, like, at the end of the movie, like, when him, like, I mean, we make the jokes, but I did love, like, the way him and Xavier talking to each other, like, knowing, like, what they've just gone through. And it's like, well, I still owed a promise. Like, I had a lot of work I had to do.
Yeah, I liked connecting McAvoy to Stewart at the end.
I love that. I loved, them just sitting there talking, like, they had so much, and what's the last thing you remember? Like, well, we got a lot of catching up to do, don't we? Like, I loved that. That shit was so good.
I'm thinking of really funny ways, by the way, real quickly, to do that Senate scene now where Xavier and Magneto are there together, but now Xavier takes control of Senator Kelly's mind and kills him.
Because he's like, and it's like the way like your parents warn you about that bad friend. They're like, that Eric Lyncher, He's a bad influence.
Xavier has now gone completely on Magneto's side.
Yeah, he's like, yeah. Oh my god.
What I have noticed, guys, is I haven't heard your comments and, whether you agree with it or not about, Singer coming back. I think it should be someone else.
I think you're completely correct, actually. I never thought about that. But, I mean, there's a thing about, he's done, he did X-Men 1, which hasn't really aged well, X2, which I think still does age well. It holds up. And then there's now this one. And he played a huge hand in First Class, which he was supposed to direct. He did direct some elements of it. He helped cast it. It was his story. So a lot of that movie's his, just as much as Matthew Vaughn's, frankly. Everyone knows it. But, I think it's time to move on. If you want to stay on as a producer and help, spearhead them, have a little bit less of an active role as you did on First Class, that's really the way to do it. But I agree, Phil. I think it's time. You did what you wanted to do. I made the text to Gabe, actually, that this is the movie that got his juices flowing again. And yes, we're going to do our jokes Bryan Singer juices flowing. But, I mean it, though. I haven't felt an energy, a real passion and energy for material from Bryan as a fan of his since Superman Returns, frankly. Whether or not you like that movie or not, you feel like it's not a mundanely shot movie. There's a lot of passion. There's a lot of real, maybe not.
It's a real movie.
It's a movie, yeah. And Valkyrie's a good movie, but I didn't feel that energy with Valkyrie. You certainly didn't feel it with Jack the Giant Killer. And this was the one that really got his energy back that he hasn't had in almost 10 years now, or 8 years, however long Superman Returns was. And so it did its job. But I think it's time for Bryan to move on and let someone else take on the apocalyptic movie set in the 80s with the AIDS allegory.
I don't want to get too inside baseball about this, but I heard them discuss plans for X-Men Apocalypse and how it was going to be the big epic war film with a lot of battle scenes and a lot of giant fights, which is a terrible thing to say when you're promoting.
It's like a Roland Emmerich film. Great.
It's a terrible thing to say when you're promoting the other movie that comes
Come back
before
next time, guys. It's going to get good soon.
Yeah, this one's okay. The next one's crazy, though.
It's the Amazing Spider-Man approach.
And but it was my feeling that the X-Men Apocalypse was going to be a much bigger budgeted film, a more epic film, based on the fact that Days of Future Past was going to be by far the most successful movie in the franchise. And X-Men movies are traditionally very front-loaded. So this thing opens at 100. I think The Last Stand did 230, 250, something like that?
It did 230.
230 and opened to
234.
Yeah.
With 3D and with inflation, this thing domestically, it should do 260 to 280. It should do 260 to 280.
Yeah,
it should.
But at the same time, you have to think of the overseas factor too. X-Men has never been that well done overseas, but this opened to 260, so it's going to end up with at least 600 overseas, which is a significant jump from the other one.
Right. That's why, that's why they're doing a third Wolverine movie, because it makes so much overseas.
But the fact is that when movies are viable overseas as opposed to domestically, that's more of a product of a growing overseas marketplace than anything else.
At the same time, keep in mind though that Days of Future Past, while it's probably going to make a little bit less than Last Stand domestically, it also cost less than Last Stand to make.
Do we know that?
Yeah, Last Stand cost $230. Days of Future Past cost $200. Last Stand was so expensive because they had to rush it. They shot in September, had to get it out in May.
That's not what I heard. Weren't there those reports that Days of Future Past was the most?
Yeah, but now all the budget's coming out from LA Times Variety and all that, which again studios lie, but then they would have lied about X3. It's $200. Rushed movies cost so much. I mean, X3 cost twice as much as X2.
I was going to say, how much did First Class cost? Because that one was the most rushed of all.
It was $160.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that was.
But they shot all that in the UK, where I think the rates are cheaper also.
No, First Class was Louisiana. A lot of it was Louisiana.
Oh, it wasn't.
Yes, it was. All the beach stuff was New Orleans. And no, a lot of it was LA too, because I had offers to work on that movie and I couldn't.
It was New Orleans, really?
A lot of
sure?
It might have been Shreveport. I know the beach stuff was Louisiana. I know they shot a lot of it in LA because again I had offers to work and I was busy at the time. So yeah, a lot of it was stateside.
interesting.
Phil, you were mentioning Days of Future Past really should be the end. Apocalypse, you'd think you would really go all out and kind of wrap it up, do the biggest story you can, but they have to do a couple things. They have to wrap up McAvoy, Lawrence, and Fassbender, because it's their last movie unless they sign on, which I would think.
McAvoy will come back.
McAvoy's the only one I think would come back. But realistically, you have to wrap them up. Then you have to introduce all these new mutants that you're going to carry on in the future films, like Channing Tatum as Gambit, and you have to do the Apocalypse story in the same movie.
Plus AIDS.
I really get the impression, you guys can correct me on this, but at this point you've given up on this series. The continuity has drilled itself into the Earth's crust.
This was a very good movie. I do want to see what Brian does next with it, but your arguments are completely valid, Phil, that creatively Brian should get the hell out of there.
It's that special child. Maybe it's not perfect, but I really enjoy it. And
but you're fearing that the next one's going to be this multitasking clusterfuck.
And you know what? It could be, or it could be a multitasking really fun
You know
movie.
what? You know why it already feels that way? Because they're already saying, oh yeah, and you know what? We're going to bring Quicksilver back. Oh, and you know what? Channing Tatum's going to be Gambit in this one. And you know what? Like Hugh Jackman might be in it again as Wolverine. Oh, and you know what? Like it's like just go make the movie.
It could work. I mean, it's not quite like X3 where it was forced at the last second to mesh all these different ideas together. They've been working on the script for a while. Singer's involved, even if he doesn't direct, he's involved. You have the writers of X2. I'm sure it wouldn't come off nearly as hectic as 3 did, where it just felt like, we're doing a bunch of stuff and we hope it works. But,
I don't think Apocalypse will be as good a movie as Days of Future Past. I'm just going to say up front, I don't.
I hope it does.
I think a lot of the goodwill that's going to go into this next movie, which will result in a much bigger opening, because word of mouth's going to carry this one.
I think Apocalypse is opening lower. Just the fact you're losing you're not going to have Stewart, you're not going to have McKellen. I think it opens way lower.
You think so? Because they still might get Jackman in there.
It opens between First Class and Days of Future Past.
Okay.
I do find it fascinating, though, that the one thing that's going to be really interesting for me is that essentially they have the Fight with Thanos movie before the Fight with Thanos movie, because the X-Men are fighting Apocalypse before the Avengers fight Thanos. So I'm going to be really interested to see what kind of effect that has. And also, one thing, I'm glad I thought about this, because I did want to mention this, and I'm going to incur Jamie's wrath. And I just want Jamie to give me a minute just to explain where I'm coming from, and then
I'm not going to do that.
Well, I might. You don't know what I'm going to say yet.
Come on.
Because this is partly because of some things I've seen on Twitter, and also an email that you sent me. But I really feel that I need to call this out to people who feel this way.
Go ahead.
I know that you love Quicksilver in this movie. We all do. It's fantastic. Sure. And again, it was proof positive that we never learn, that we always prejudge these things. Well, I say all of us. I don't mean that. I mean whoever prejudged it and said it looks fucking stupid, and now we're eating our words, just like we have done with previous X-Men movies and other comic book movies, and we never ever seem to learn, and it's depressing for me. But what I also need to say, I've said it on Twitter, I'll say it out loud now, is that you cannot, as much as you love Quicksilver, because you have a film to base that judgment on, you cannot now be saying that this is going to wipe the floor with the Quicksilver we're getting next year, because you don't know. You don't know. We might be right, and we'll have this conversation next year. I admit that it's definitely casts a long shadow, no doubt about that. But again, if we're not going to give them a chance, we're making the exact same mistake.
I agree with you. My only argument is that because our community gives more of a free pass to someone like Joss Whedon and to Marvel at this point than they did.
They haven't been this weekend, I can tell you.
This is just a quick knee-jerk reaction, which our community does all the time. There's still a lot of benefit of the doubt going on. I've still seen a lot of people who are trying to excuse really bad-looking set pictures, and which, granted, all set pictures look bad anyway. You have to keep having to re-explain that to people, but they don't listen. And I just think, and the fact that it's Aaron Johnson, I think he's a fine actor. I actually had no problem with him in Godzilla. I had problems with everything else in that movie.
Yeah, his performance in that movie was fine. It was just
perfectly
the script
fine.
didn't give him anything.
Exactly. But I think the problem is that I do think a year from now you're going to see most people say, I like the other guy's Quicksilver. But then again, most people probably aren't going to put those two together. Most people don't understand this weird legal copyright snafu that allowed them both to happen.
Most people who see Avengers 2 aren't going to realize that's the same character.
They are going to get to this supposed to be the same character in a different universe. They don't get it. And it's going to be lost on them. But yeah, I think a lot in our community are going to really admit, like, boy, Evan Peters was a lot better. I think that's going to happen. I mean, Phil, but you're right though. We should judge a book by its cover. I'm not poo-pooing on Aaron Johnson or how he looks or any of that kind of stuff. But
the only thing I can say right now that will give him the edge, and at least make him stand out, is if they really play on the brother-sister relationship, because that's
which
the thing.
They will.
Well, there you go then. So at least
they should, because in this one it's like that's clearly not. Even if he still is Magneto's son, that clearly isn't Magneto's daughter, unless like he got conjugal visits.
Well, Scarlet Witch was apparently upstairs. Singer said they filmed something and they cut it out.
It's in the TV spots.
Oh, is it? With the sister or whatever?
I'm a princess. I'm the Wolverine.
I saw that, yeah.
Wow.
I would actually say, who gives a shit? I mean,
This concludes the McLaughlin group.
I give a shit. This is the most important thing ever.
What we're talking about here is like the 8th or 9th most important character in both of these movies. I think
very good point.
Most people are going to watch this, they're going to see Quicksilver, and they're going to go, huh! And then maybe a couple of fangirls or fanboys will be like, that's my favorite character. And everyone else is going to say, that was a thing that happened. No one cares. Who's we? I don't give a shit. Do you?
Not you. Okay, not you. I mean...
We address these geek straw men, like these people who thought that Godzilla was gonna hold up or was gonna fall over their second weekend. What the fuck does that have to do with actual movies? Who cares? Fuck it. Godzilla's gonna make a lot of money or no money. After the first weekend, it doesn't really matter, does it?
It's about the first 2 weeks, actually. It's about the first 2 weeks.
It's not about anything. It's like, it's another Godzilla movie. The Godzilla brand is still going to exist with Toho. And, maybe, there'll be another Godzilla movie from another big studio, whether it be Warner Brothers and Legendary or someone else. I think Sony made the one in the 90s.
Yeah, they did. Someone else. I just hope that Godzilla, I just hope Godzilla is as fat in the next one as he is in this one.
But we're talking, it's fun to, it's fun to talk about the actual movies, but then when we start talking about reactions and what people are going to think, are people going to, be angry about Quicksilver or whatever? We need to get away from that because it's an echo chamber, and 1, it keeps us from talking about real movies. 2, we're addressing fucking losers on a message board who make up point, and I hope, and I'm sure they're listening.
Studios listen to, sadly.
Yes, and they listen to, and they shouldn't fucking listen to it, and they listen to it because we give them credence, even though they're 0.0001 of the audience.
Still remember when
we don't give them credence. Technology gives them credence, and unfortunately, lovely. I wish I was a film critic, Gabe. I wish I could go to the screenings and converse outside at the end with the people that you get to interact with, but I don't. I have to talk to the people that I speak to on Twitter and email and all of that stuff, and I love the people that I interact with. I'm not labeling it at all, but obviously you see, other people who make these reactions, these knee-jerk reactions. They never, I want to have intelligent conversation. I really, really fucking do. That's why I do this show. But when I'm not doing it, I have to put up with the other crap, and it's just depressing how we never move on. And it's why I want to quit sometimes. You've surely got to appreciate why I get frustrated too.
I would just, it's all white noise at a certain point. I went to a screening in 2000. I think it was 2010 when The Social Network came out. Yeah. I went to. I might have mentioned this before, but I went to the first screening of it, which was at the New York Film Festival. It was the world premiere, and no one had seen this movie yet at all. And so everyone, all the media's there, all the journalists, and they do a little Q&A with Fincher and Timberlake and a couple of the other people, and which some asshole was like, when are you gonna go back to making music, Justin Timberlake? But anyway, we walk out, and there's the lobby chatter, and people are talking this and that, and blah 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 blah. And one guy who I know, he's starting a conversation. He's like, we're the first audience in the world to see this, so we're all opinionated. And he starts saying, yeah, I don't know if the Oscars are really going to go with it.
Oh, God.
It took every bone in my fucking body to not punch this fucking asshole so hard that his teeth were spit out like fucking chiclets. I'm telling you, the fact is that somebody would come out of this movie And, whether you liked it or didn't like it or thought it was interesting or didn't think it was interesting, and you start talking about not only someone else's opinion, but the opinion of an elderly, overly white, outdated, pathetic organization of sycophants who see 5 movies a fucking year, how little do you value your own opinion that you need to start talking about these other people immediately? What sort of pathetic human being are you, and why have you been invited to the first ever screening of this movie to help shape the fucking dialogue about the movie? It's like, I hate addressing the thoughts and opinions of other people who are insignificant. In this case, it's the fucking Academy. But you guys are talking about, like, people discussing Quicksilver costumes on message boards. If I'm geared towards violence, towards some, like, Gold Derby watcher or some shit like that, I can't imagine what I would do to these people. Oh, well, Quicksilver, maybe they should actually watch some real fucking movies, because it's 2014 and you could see them on DVD, you could see them on Blu-ray, you could see them on Amazon, you could see them on Netflix, you could see them on Hulu. The excuse of I can't access these movies does not exist.
So much easier
you could see
to
them
find
on
movies.
VOD. You could see them a billion different ways. So these people who are going on about the minutia of this shit, we should not address them at all, because they are pathetic people. They are pathetic people who don't even like movies and probably don't deserve movies.
God, Gabe, you're just so boring when you're not passionate about something.
Well, on that bombshell, I did have some other stuff, but it hasn't gone that way. But that's fine. That's fine. We'll leave you wanting more, folks. I mean, I think at this point, I think it's about time to wrap it up. So I hope you enjoyed it. The show was a little more chaotic than I was thinking it was going to be. It wasn't quite so structured and organised, and hopefully you did get some enjoyment out of it nonetheless. It's going to be fun to cut this one. So at this point, I'm just going to thank my wonderful, wonderful guests who made it a unique experience, not at all like it was planning to be. That's why I love them so much. So first of all, Mr. Gabe Toro, thank you so much for your time. It's been too long.
Tremble!
Matt Thompson, same to you, sir.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. Thanks, Phil.
Yeah, fun. Yeah, that's a wonderful word. It encompasses so much. I'm not quite sure what I had tonight, but it was something. Jamie, same to you, sir.
I got you, sir, as always.
And we'll be back with Edge of Tomorrow, I guess. If it's fucking worse than Night and Day, I've got to do this one, haven't I? Well, we'll be back with something, I'm not quite sure. But until we are, have a wonderful, wonderful summer, and we'll see you soon. Take care.